Hey everybody, Stu Smith here, going live, taking some questions today. Not doing a uh, big combat swimmer stroke day today. Today is just asking questions, and the reason why I'm doing this on Monday is I'm looking for article topics to write about for the rest of the week. So, can you provide those? That's the question I am asking you. And if you ask questions, I will answer them. And if they're really good, I'll probably put them in an article of some sort. Um, so let's start off while we get people on here. Wrote an article at Stu Smith Fitness this weekend. StuSmithFitness.com. Check it out. It's called The Difference Between Overthinking and Underthinking Your Future Goals. And there's two things that typically happen when you are especially preparing for whatever goal that is, whether that's military, law enforcement, spec ops, fitness preparation, or it's preparing academically for college or medical school, law school, whatever, steps that you have to take to get to that level of next level um, performance. A lot of people tend to screw up that process and fail to even get to the training or to the school because they either did one of two things. They overthought it or underthought it, if that makes sense. Underthink it or overthink it. And that usually happens with two types of people as well. Confident people or overconfident people tend to underthink things because they think they're good enough already. They don't need to think things. Underconfident people tend to overthink things. And they did a study recently for a selection program where they looked at confidence. And confidence is actually, they were able to basically create a bell curve of the type of people that were going to that training program. And the people that made it were in the middle, obviously, and the fringes on the left and right. Folks that didn't make it were either overconfident or underconfident. Not sure how they created questions that made that outcome, but it's kind of an interesting thing. But I was thinking, why are overconfident people screwing it up and why are underconfident people screwing it up? And really, it comes down to one of them overthinks it and the other one underthinks it. And both can be costly to your performance, especially if you think you don't need to do something because you're good enough already. Be a little overconfident. So you don't really think about the process that you're about to go through. You don't do the research that is needed to help you understand the level of fitness that you have to be in to get through these kind of programs. Now, I just took any goal and made it more towards a physical, challenging military selection for spec ops type of goal, because that's typically what people ask me about. They don't ask me about preparing for med school, but it's really the same thing, right? It is, people who don't succeed in whatever that goal is over here are typically having problems with overthinking it, underthinking it, and both are just as bad. So, anyway, it's kind of an interesting topic. Take a look at it. And I even put in some, ways to help you not overthink things, as well as not underthink things, right? So, kind of interesting. So that's at StuSmithFitness.com. I also write 3 articles a week for military.com. And this week, I've already written Mondays, but I'm looking for 2 more this week. So this today I wrote about, how the Army is no longer doing the leg tuck. Now they're doing the plank pose. And there's some arguments to why that's a good call and why making it a little bit easier is not a good call. But I see both sides of that coin. I will say this though, that new Army combat fitness test is legit. And there aren't many other combat fitness tests out there or fitness tests out there that challenge the grip like this one. So with deadlifts and the sprint drag carry event, those two can really fry your grip. And if you added in the leg tuck, which is basically a hanging knee up like this, people's grip were given out to a point where they couldn't finish the drill, even though they had more leg tucks in them. And if you're going to have a core exercise, you probably don't need to have it be one of those issues that because you have a bad grip, you didn't finish the rep. So is it really a core exercise anymore? It'd be a grip exercise. So anyway, there was some debate about that. That thing has been going under change for over a decade now. And I think it's for the better. It's much better than push-ups, sit-ups, and a 2-mile run. I don't care who you are. If you think that is better for the Army, you and I just did have a different set of opinions for sure. I would say any test, even the PST, any test that's calisthenics and cardio is a health and wellness test and have very little to do with your future performance as a soldier or spec ops guy. But you got to get to the training in order to get through the training. And, you know, they are, it's good to have cardiovascular endurance and muscle stamina, of course, but you also need strength and power, speed, agility, flexibility, mobility. You need grip. So, you know, those courses, those new tests that they have coming and that are already here in many branches are really good, I think. If you're going to have tactical fitness, you might as well have really good tactical fitness tests. All right, so let's see. We got some questions here. Let's take some. VT says, hey, Stu, I'm preparing for my first recreational marathon using your marathon running program. That is an article, by the way. If you're looking for that, you can Google it. It's nothing fancy. It's just a basic 10 to 15% progression spread throughout multiple weeks, many weeks, probably at least 16, maybe 20. Hit a wall at phase 2, week 4. Tried to complete week 4 3 times and failed. Should I roll back to week 3? Yeah, I would. You know, the thing to do is just keep track of whatever total miles you have each week. And even if you don't fail, or even if you fail to reach all of the miles that week, that's fine. Still keep a track of what you've done that week and just add 10 to 15% to that. You know, you can personalize this to how you progress. And if you're not progressing at the same scale as a generic running program, that's no big deal. You know, if I were making a running program for somebody and I wanted it to be perfect, I would make it 1 week at a time and not a 12-week running program. Say, here, call me when you need me. In fact, that's how I do online coaching. I don't make 12-week programs for anybody. I make a 1-week program. Their feedback helps me create the next week's program, and that's how we progress depending on their progression and ability to get workouts done. Because life gets in the way, and sometimes you miss a workout. No big deal. My suggestion would just keep on going with it as long as you're not injured. Keep on rolling with it and just do what you can. And then the following week, you get to week 5 and you just keep track. And then when you hit your 15% from the previous week marker, that's when you're done that week. But if you happen to progress 20% one week, not that big a deal. I mean, you're talking about, maybe a mile or two max, in a 6-day period of running. So not a big deal. 2 ways to do things: do it right or do it again. That's a good one. No problem. For sure. Yeah, think about it a little bit, but damn, don't overthink it. But also don't go into it, blind and have no idea what you're getting into because you've done no research, you've done no preparation. You're just going in there on gut feeling. That's a no way to find success. How have failures in your career helped you? I've written some articles about failure, actually. I'm gonna put this. This is a really good one. In fact, I'm challenging you guys to ask me a question I've never answered. I've never written about today, by the way. And I'm going to do another live Q&A either tomorrow or Wednesday. Just depends on my schedule. Jeff Nichols and I are doing a podcast tomorrow in my normal time. So I may just do it right after that with a CSS critique show. But I'm going to start doing 2 of these a week now. And I'm trying to figure out a good day to do that. I almost want to do it on the weekend, but weekends get busy too. So right now, I may just keep it on a Monday. We'll see. I may have a floating one around, and I'll let people know. But anyway, failures, succeed, failures, how failures can drive success. I've written a couple articles. One of them's called How Failures Can Drive Success. The other one's called Fitness Mistakes and Failures, and We Are Experts at Failing. Another one, Top Reasons Why People Fail Spec Ops. Damn. You know why I tend to write about failing? Because believe it or not, people will read more about failing than they will success. It's just proven. It's pretty nuts that people will click a failure article before they will click a success article. Not sure who did that study, but it was pure statistics. I just connected 3 articles into the comment section here, and it's all on failure. All right. So, but to answer your question in a short, maybe 1 minute, and get on to the next one. I would say my failures that I have had have really driven my whole life to not want to do that again. Whether it was back in high school, I quit playing baseball. Felt like I quit my friends. Because I had friends I've been playing baseball since I was 8 years old. And then I quit playing baseball. That was hard. But I wound up, there's a reason for that. I sucked. And, I'd spent the whole winter, instead of wrestling like I did the previous 2 years, I spent the winter doing powerlifting, which really screwed up my baseball and throwing. So I wound up just throwing shot put. So I quit, and I never wanted to feel that feeling again. So that right there was something that has really kind of driven me to, like, I don't want to feel like that ever again. I'm not quitting anything else. So that was one. The other one was when I was a freshman and at the Naval Academy. I know I've written about this several times as well. My first fitness test, I failed. My first chemistry test I failed. And by Thanksgiving, I was like barely hanging on my freshman year. I mean, there were people doing worse than me, but not many. But I wound up maxing the next fitness test. I wound up passing, never failing anything in academics. Wasn't pretty, but never failed anything. And but it was a realization that, once again, kind of like the theme of this when I first started, I didn't really think about how I needed to up my game at this next level. So at high school, I was crushing, did really well. Sure, freshman year, you got to up your game and bring it to the high school level. But then you got to do the same thing when you're a freshman in college. You got to take your high school game and up at a level, right? When you go to college. And then, when you finish college, you got to up your game and do it again. Um, and when you make it through buds, you got to up your game, and you're at the teams, right? So it's a constant evolution of progression that, if you're not familiar with and if you don't acknowledge, your next level will be your last level that you won't get into, if that makes sense. So that is how I think failures in my history have helped me drive towards a direction of not failing anymore. So I hope that helps you. Let's see. Hey, I'm prepping to do your workouts during the summer over in Florida. Nice. I'm from Florida, by the way. I don't know if you know that. North Florida, Suwannee County, Live Oak. That's where I went to Suwannee High School when I was a kid. Right on the Suwannee River. Any fitness tips to adjust to the summer environment, such as running and calisthenics in the heat? My suggestion is get up early in the morning before the heat of the day crushes your soul. That's what we do here. We work out right as the sun's coming up, or in the summer, right? It might be up for 10, 20 minutes. We start early, so the heat of the day is mild, even though it could be humid. I mean, it's still in the heat of the summer, it might be 80 degrees at 6 a.m. and 100% humidity, but later in the day, it's going to be 100 and 100% humidity. My advice is get it done early. Then when you have something to do later, maybe make that a air conditioning weight room or swimming pool, something that's going to keep you cooler. Because sometimes later in the day, in the heat of the day, you got to really limit your time out there. So sometimes, yes, you can't avoid it. I try to do about 30 minutes in the heat of the day if I'm doing something, and then find some shade, do some cool down activities in the shade, go back in the heat of the day, do that again. So there's ways to do it. My suggestion is bring a lot of water, bring some electrolytes. Just because once you're going to be sweating a lot, you got to replenish that. You also need to replenish the electrolytes, especially if you can squeeze out the sweat in your shirt or socks. It's really gross. If you can squeeze that out, you definitely need more water and more electrolytes. Otherwise, you're going to soon be a heat casualty. And that's the goal, I would say, when you're working out in the heat, is try to avoid being a heat casualty. In fact, I'm going to put this in here because this is really, really important. Avoid being a heat casualty. I'm sure I've written about it. I've done podcasts on it. In fact, I think Jeff and I both. Yep, here's a good one. I'm going to put this in the comment section. Jeff and I both did a really good podcast 208, Don't Become a Heat Casualty, and how this applies to selection, training, work, sports, all that. Check that out. That should give you a ton of information for you. No problem. Hello from Russia. Respect, and sorry about Ukraine. Not a problem. I appreciate that you even know what's going on in Ukraine, because the amount of disinformation that floats around in our internet world is insane. I hope it works out for both countries. How's that? Okay, been stretching for about 45 minutes to an hour each day. Has improved performance. Good. I'm thorough believer in stretching. I mean, it is that important for sure. Stretching, mobility work, movement, even foam rolling, massage tooling, all of those things are very helpful. Let's see. Yep, heat and water is really important. My team and I had to play 2 soccer games on a turf field, Miami, Florida. Woo! Yeah. You know something? Something I used to do when we have kids that were doing summer camps like that is, if I had a team of them, they do their soccer or baseball or whatever, and then we go back to the hotel, clean up before the next one. I make every one of them jump into the swimming pool and just sit for 10, 15 minutes. And what you'd be surprised at the level of body heat that causes fatigue. If you can just cool yourself down for 10 or 15 minutes in that kind of water. And it wasn't that cold. It was in the 80s still. But when you take a 100-degree body and put it into an 80-degree body of water, that body of water is going to cool down. Take some time to do it, but it works. And a lot of people, half of people's fatigue is just pure body heat. They come back and get a good second wind from that cooling down cycle. So nothing wrong with cooling yourself down. If you even have cooler water, even better. Doesn't need to be ice water, but if it's in the 60s or 70s, much better. You get cold pretty quickly. Not that you're trying to get cold, you're just trying to get cooler. And you may find some new life in your abilities. One of the places I noticed it was during the summer when we're working out, like I mentioned earlier, 80 something degrees. It's 100% humidity, and then we go do that for an hour and a half or so, PT, running, just getting after it. And then we go into the pool for the next 45 minutes to do a swim workout, and everybody to the person has got nothing. Like, we go into the pool and we're like, how are we supposed to do 2,000 yards with push-ups and abs and pool PT? Really? You really want to do that? I said, trust me, let's go into the pool. We're just going to warm up with a tread, and all we do is just really sit there, tread and float, kind of shoot the breeze for a little bit for 10 minutes. And everybody to the person got a second wind and was able to crush that swim workout. Not because we hydrated, we did hydrate. Wasn't because anything other than we just cooled our body temperature. And that made a big difference in our performance. So remember that. Anytime you can get wet, especially if the water's cooler than the air. Let's see. Let me see here. Hey, coach, is push-up app workable for squats? You know what? I don't know. I've never done it for squats. Push-up push app. So there is an app for that, but it's also a free article too, where you do, whatever you can do for push-ups, max rep push-ups for 2 minutes, multiply that by 5, and you do that number for 10 days straight, take 3 days off, and you test. People have seen pretty good additional performance numbers in just 14 days of that. But I've never done it with squats, and definitely not with weight. It is not a weighted model. This is a muscle stamina model that works only with calisthenics, in my understanding. I've done it with pull-ups, push-ups, and sit-ups, and have seen progress with that. Let's see, Army spouse, is there a fitness program available for us? You know what? If you go to Stu Smith Fitness, there is a section in the menu called General Fitness, and I actually have several. Um, and I do have a lady who helped me write. She was a Navy spouse, lost 80 pounds, and it was called Reclaim Your Life. Actually do sell. I only sell it in ebook form, but there are other options too um, in the general fitness section. So there's beginners, there's obstacle course races, there's over 40 tactical fitness over 40 workouts, there's circuit training workouts, but those are really I try to make those towards that very beginner slash early intermediate phase is where all those are, except for obstacle course workout. That's a hard one. TRX workout's pretty tough too. But yeah, we have some over 40 books that are beginner mode that are pretty good. Let's see, is there an average amount of hours per week competitive candidates are putting in before going SOF? Spending too little time versus too much time? Yeah, that's a great question. I think instead of worrying about total volume of time, which you can, think about productive time. So a lot of times I see people wasting time, just spending hours running at a 10-minute mile. You're just going to get really slow. Yes, there's something called building an aerobic base, and I get it. You want to be in that zone 1, zone 2 area when you're building an aerobic base, but you can also build an aerobic base without all the impact of running by mixing in swimming and biking. So consider, if you are trying to build an aerobic base, instead of doing nothing but long, slow distance running, consider treating it like a triathlete where a third of your cardio is running and the other 2/3 are more non-impact options. Biking, swimming, obviously, but you can make it elliptical, you can make it rowing, stair stepper on leg days. Those are pretty tough. But yeah, so where I see people screw up is they waste a lot of time on things that either they're already good at and they are trying to get great at, right? And they leave a weakness behind and they haven't really thoroughly developed a weakness. Unfortunately, that's more common than it sounds. It goes against all common sense, but people like doing what they like to do, right? What they're good at, right? When you find something you're not good at doing, it's hard to bite that bullet and go do it. For me, it was long distance running and running fast at 4-mile timed runs. I had to work really hard to get good at 4-mile timed runs. And it took me a lot of time. I had to get good at swimming a mile with fins and swimming 500 without killing myself, for a PST. So that kind of conditioning took some time for me. So that was my weakness. Strength, PT numbers, no problem. Didn't need to spend a lot of time on that. I spent more time on the cardio side, and I did fine. Still had to, gut check some runs, just because that's the way it is. But that's where competitive candidates screw up, is they neglect something and they try to get really, really good at something else, and they neglect other things. But as far as total time, I would say, you do need to put time in the saddle. So that means, 2 to 3 hours is not going to be uh, um, unnormal, right? It's pretty normal. So, and that doesn't have to be all at once. For instance, like today, we already worked out from 6 until 8. And then, that was running and calisthenics. That's all it was. And then we swam from 8 until 8:45. So it was almost 3 hours of training. Now, could we go do something else? Yeah. If you needed to work on a weakness, you need to work on some technique. That is where I would spend any extra time. I think 3 to 4 hours a day is plenty as far as training, and that takes a lot to build up to be able to do that. So don't just jump into a 3-4 hour training day. And a lot of this too is just individual events just take longer. Like rucking, if you're going to ruck for 5 miles, which you should be if you're going Army, 5, 8, 10, maybe even 12. I mean, that's going to take a couple hours just doing that. So you definitely are going to have to put in the time. So let me give you some ballparks. I would say 2 hours a day minimum. And if you're kind of tired, you spend another hour working on mobility or some technique somewhere. That means treading water or drown proofing or maybe some skill work, with lifting, focusing on technique, with running, have somebody watch you run and make sure your mechanics are right. That's where I would spend that later hour, working on mobility, flexibility, and technique. So, but as you get better, you're going to find 2 hours is not that challenging. I'm 53 years old and just did a 2-hour workout and don't feel exhausted. Could do something again, but I'll probably pay for it later if I did. Being 22 years old, there's no reason why you can't lift if that's a weakness, or swim a little more if that's a weakness, or put on a few more miles and run a little more if that's a weakness. So that's how I would set that up. That was a long answer, but that's a really good question. And it's going to be different for everybody. So unfortunately, I can't give you just one easy number because everybody's going to be a little different. But I would say once they're rocking out of here and they are an above average candidate, they're hitting all those numbers on that assessment tool that I have. I don't know if you guys have seen this. I'll put this here. Let's say you're hitting all of these assessment numbers on this chart that I'm putting in the comment section. If you can hit all this, there's a podcast on that too that Jeff and I discuss, where above average candidates usually hit on some of those numbers: timed runs, lifts, reps of calisthenics, all that. If you can hit that, I would say you're probably going to be at the 3 to 4 hour a day training. Now, it doesn't mean you spend the rest of the day sleeping. You should probably be working, right? There's nothing wrong with working a manual labor job on top of that, because let me tell you, there's no short gym workout that's going to prepare you for a day of spec ops training. You're going to be up, moving around, working out a little bit, pushing yourself, and then you're up, moving around, doing odd things, carrying stuff. It's just nonstop movement. So working on top of those workouts is better. There's no nap time in spec ops training day. So, all right, let's see. Mikkel asks a question. Danish Jaegers. Good luck. Doing your Army SF 3 months prior. Good. Should I focus on lifting weights and rucking to build a good base, and then later focus on run, swim, ruck, PT, so kind of like the endurance, muscle stamina? Or should I use periodization in my training? Yeah, you should use periodization in your training if you got that much time. But here's the deal. It doesn't really matter. You can build a foundation of strength and then tap into the muscle stamina and endurance. I would recommend that. Or you can build a foundation in muscle stamina and endurance and then put the strength on the backside of that with a cycle of strength. So it doesn't really matter which way you do it. My suggestion would be to make it depend on your weakness. So for instance, I'm going to give you my story. Once again, powerlifting football player, anything over 100 meters was long distance. When I started making that shift into spec ops prep, I quit lifting weights and all I did was calisthenics, run, swim, and bike. So I basically trained like a triathlete that did calisthenic pyramids all the time. Not all the time, every other day. I did upper body, lower body splits. Um, that is all I did for probably close to a good year and a half. And then I would add a strength cycle just to see where I was, and I was shocked that I didn't really lose a lot of strength. Um, it took me about 4 to 6 weeks, and I was back to old 1 rep maxes. And if you come from a strength background, you'll find that putting on strength is pretty easy. Again, if you come from an endurance background, put on a little mass and you put on a little bit of strength, you'll find that going back to more endurance stuff is pretty easy. Really kind of depends on your foundation, what your athletic history, on how you drive that. So that is my recommendation. Let your athletic history drive it. Let your current weaknesses drive on what you need to start on first. Get those to an acceptable level, and then from there you can go back and maintain what you're good at. Great question. These are good questions today. How do you attribute your fitness longevity? What do I attribute my fitness longevity to? Great question, Adam. I wrote an article about it. In fact, did a podcast on it too with a great guy who's a little bit younger than me. He's in his 40s, I think, but he's an Army PhD in nutrition. Army guy, professor of performance nutrition. You guys will really like this article. And basically, here's the deal. Here's the cool thing, what I'm about to tell you is longevity is the mastery of recovery. Okay, so you got to get really good at all the ways to recover. That means sleeping, that means eating, that means hydrating, means getting electrolytes, means flexibility, mobility. All of those things come into play with you being able to continue to be active as you age. Another thing I did too is at 40, I realized, you know what? Every time I do something to my near max, like if I do a 1 rep max of something, or I do a sprint, 100-meter sprint, or I try to really ramp up my mileage and hit 40 or 50 miles a week, something always starts hurting. Either I pull a muscle, got some joint tendonitis, or I actually get injured if I really hurt myself. Over the years, I have realized, and I'm 53 now, that I have always hurt myself in those 3 areas. And it was really, a lot of times it was I didn't warm up enough. And so I pulled a muscle sprinting. That took 6 months before I could sprint again. I did the same thing, maybe didn't warm up enough with a deadlift, hurt my back. Nothing crazy, didn't need to go to the doctor even, but it was enough to, like, for, a couple of months, I had to really kind of baby my training and just do calisthenics instead of lift. So all of those things have had ways of contributing to some injuries. So probably about 13 years ago, when I turned 40, I made a decision that 80% is my new 100%. So that means when all the guys are doing a 100-meter sprint, I'm running with them, but I don't care, right? I'm running fast, run as fast as I need to be. But if I go any faster, sometimes I'll play around. I'll try to hit 85, 90, almost full speed. And I'm like, just back it off because I know what's coming next. I think, getting smarter with your body as you age is also part of this. But 80% is a new 100% for me after 40. Before 40, I was like blowing it up. It didn't really matter, but I was injured often. It happens. You take, it's a yin and yang thing. Now, here's the other magic side to that. The key to optimal fitness is also the mastery of recovery. So it's the very same thing: sleep, nutrition, hydration, electrolytes, flexibility, mobility. All of those things go into creating optimal performance as well. Now, obviously, your training is going to be a big part of that too. But everything rides on your ability to recover. In fact, I'm going to put into this article, or I'm sorry, this um, into the comment section, recovery, because I created I think I put the article in there, didn't I? Yeah, I think I did. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is recovery actually created a one-stop shop for recovery that has probably a dozen articles, no, 2 dozen articles, and probably a dozen podcasts on the topics of recovery. That means eating, sleeping, injury prevention, all of those things. Check out that, because that is a laundry list of really good information for you. Stress mitigation, that's a big one too. If you can live a life that's a little less stressful, that's helpful, you know. So all of that comes into play. So a great question written about it. All right, so let's see, 30 years old, working on a package for the board SOAS next year. Woo, going to be pushing that age limit. Though I have heard that there is no longer an age limit. Have you heard that? I don't know. Somebody, I think it might be a rumor, but used to be 29 anyway. Any insight on the current path for old guys getting a shot? I've actually written about that as well. Old Guys podcast. Stu Smith. Let's see. Jeff Nichols and I did the old guy getting through buds. Here it is. The old guy preps for buds. And we put old guy in quotes because, to be honest with you, I wish I was 30. That 30 was 23 years ago for me. Something else? Let me share this with you. You'll like this. See this? Buds class 182. So that's my buds class. And 30 years ago, in the month of July 2nd, will be our 30th year graduating from buds. So yeah, you're 30 years old, and I graduated from buds 30 years ago. So how about that? Woo, getting old. Have a degree and 8 years in the Air Force enlisted service. Oh, okay. So that's probably why you're able to go in there, because usually what they'll do is they'll actually subtract your enlisted service from the age. And that's how older guys get into buds, is they have a little bit of subtraction on their total age. But yeah, check out that article. I think I wrote an article on it as well, but it's definitely a podcast. The Old Guy Preps for Buds. Did I put it in there? Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, I did. Yes. Yeah, check out that podcast. Jeff Nichols and I did a really good podcast on the old guy gets through buds. Is 24 to 25 too old to enlist in the Army? No. Go. Man, that's probably in the best shape of my life, 24, 25. Highly recommend it at that age. How many times does Recon do the rucksack run? I have no idea. Just, I assume many, because they're Marines. They ruck a lot. How many days before SOAS should I start tapering, running 50 miles a week right now? 50 miles a week probably is not even necessary. My advice would be you're going to be tested on 1.5 miles, and you're going to be tested on a 4-mile timed run when you're going through SOAS. So make sure those are good. It does no good if 25 of those 50 miles are 8 or 9 minute mile pace, right? Crush your 4 miles and so you need a 6-minute mile pace at, for the 1.5 miles at least, and you need at least a 7-minute mile pace for your 4-mile timed run. So you're going to shoot for sub 9 and sub 28 on those events. And remember, Buds is just a week long, or SOAS is just a week long. So, the amount of preparation needed for SOAS is not the same that you need for Buds. All right. My suggestion is be well rested, well tested, because that whole week is nothing but being tested physically and leadership and how you handle stress. All of those things come into it. Don't be super stressed and burned out showing up. So, if you're at 50 miles a week now, I would start tapering a month out, and start cutting it back and, go to 25 miles a week, but make each one of those runs either a 6 or 7 minute mile or faster paced run. You got your aerobic base taken care of. Now you're also going to want to swim with fins. You're going to want to tread water. So any other of those weaknesses, take some of that time that it took you to run 25 miles extra that week and put it on other weaknesses. That's where people screw up. You're good at running if you can run 50 miles a week. Now let's focus on some other weakness. Is that lifting? You're going to be doing a lot of weighted lunges. I would definitely recommend weighted lunges. Running, rucking. You're going to be rucking. So rucking in soft sand sucks. Be prepared for that. Let's see. Is there a flotation device I can use other than bulky life jacket? I'm swimming in a lake for the summer. There's a couple different options. If you do a Google search on like UDT life jacket, you'll probably find something good there. You can get a buoy and swim buoy that tie around your waist. So if you ever needed something, you could just hold on to the buoy, but people can see you, because you're dragging this buoy around. Another option is to get, I can't remember what it's called, swim bungee, I think. Yeah, Google swim bungee. Yeah, these things are so cool. I went on Amazon and bought one. They're really not that expensive. You can get them at Amazon, you get them at Swimmer Outlet. But basically what you do is you wear a belt, and it's this rubber bands basically that you tie to a pier, and you just do all your swimming right there. So you don't even need to swim across a lake. You just swim in one spot tied to a pier. That's another way. Whenever COVID happened and we shut down, everybody shut down the pools and stuff, couldn't swim, but I was able to get in a backyard pool, tie my swim bungee to the ladder, and just turn a regular 20-foot pool into a constant 45-minute swim with having a whole bunch of turnarounds with that swim bungee. So try that as an option, or I would get a swim buoy. Just so if you needed to, you could hold on to it, and people would see you. But I would say the safest option would go with the swim bungee and tie it to a pier. Let's see. Yeah, in fact, we just had a 35-year-old enlist in the Army. So 25 is not a big deal. Wanted to know your opinion on ATG tying up with cows on strength days. I'm not too sure, to be honest with you. I guess you could, but you got to be smart about it and make sure whatever you're adding to a calisthenics day or a strength day matches those movements. So for instance, today we did calisthenics that were pull-ups, push-ups, flutter kicks, and dips, and we also ran. Now, if I were to add any weights to that at the end of the day in a separate workout, I would add bench press, probably weighted pull-ups, weighted dips, pull downs, rows, some overhead presses, things like that. So it matches the muscle groups for that day. Where people screw up is they'll do, calisthenics one day, the next day it'll be leg and a run for calisthenics, but they'll do a upper body weight training day. Then the next day they're doing upper body calisthenics. So if you look at that week in a snapshot, they've done 3 upper body days in a row, and they wonder why they're not getting stronger and they're not getting better at their push-ups and pull-ups. So you just got to be smart, how you structure your splits with whatever you add to your training. Let's see. I was in boot camp with 2 39-year-olds. Yeah, you're way good. Yeah, we've actually sent somebody 42 to boot camp. So it can be done. Yeah, Mikhail. So you were more of an endurance athlete. So I would say, yeah, mix in some swimming, land nav, lifts. You can do some calisthenics. Yeah, my suggestion, a lot of people who are like running athletes aren't that good at calisthenics yet, but you'll find that if you do a calisthenics cycle coming from an endurance athlete background, you're going to be better than everybody else in about 2 to 3 months with your calisthenics. It's just one of those things that endurance and muscle stamina work hand in hand. So you're already built to put on reps of pull-ups and push-ups and dips and those kind of body weight exercises. One, you're also probably pretty light, so it's a little easier to do pull-ups, as a lighter person. However, yes, when you start doing load-bearing activities like rucking, fireman carries, load, carrying farmer walks, stuff like that, you definitely will want to do a strength cycle somewhere in that year, and make it a big one. Make it a 6-12 week cycle where you focus on building strength. You drop your running down, drop your cardio down just a little bit, not a whole lot. You don't want to neglect it completely. Maybe just warm up with calisthenics versus actually do a workout with calisthenics, and then focus on your strength. Put on some mass, eat a lot, gain 10 pounds. Then you come back around, do another calisthenics cardio cycle, 15 pounds heavier. Now you're starting to build the kind of frame that's going to be able to handle the mileage and the loads that you're going to put it on when you get a little bit older and you're going into those tactical fitness programs. I've seen it countless times. That's the way I would do it. Yeah, getting smarter with your body. I like that. Better than mentally stupid versus mentally tough. Yes. There is a fine line between mentally tough and stupid. And when you work out with 22-year-olds and you're 53, sometimes you push that, and you just have to be a little adventurous to push it sometimes, but also listen to your body and know when too much is too much. Believe me, I'm a much better at giving that advice than taking it. My wife will probably agree with that statement because she sees me like she knows when I'm overtraining. A while back ago, I gave her a list. I said, here's all the symptoms of overtraining. Wrote an article on it too. You guys can find that one. And I said, if you ever see any of these, just let me know because I'm not going to notice it. And she is like the professional now of telling me that I'm overtraining. So she sees it before I do for sure. Especially when it becomes irritability is one of the symptoms. So how do I train and go to and through selection with a shoulder tendonitis that won't heal even after physical therapy 1.5 years? I have no idea. I mean, we had a dude that went through buds. He had a torn labrum. And back in the 90s, if you went to the doctor with a torn labrum, you were disqualified from going to buds. So he would separate his shoulder. I think he separated his shoulder at least 4 times going through buds, but he just snapped it back in and kept going. I remember one of the worst times ever. And this is what you're going to have to endure, perhaps. I don't know. If it's tendonitis, you probably won't have a problem with it actually separating. Just going to have to deal with the pain. I won't ever forget, he was making his bed, reached out, real far, tucking in whatever, and I just see him laying on the bed, like holding his elbow, and I'm like, oh man, did it happen again? Because I played rugby with him, 3 years before that, so I knew what was up. And sure enough, he had dislocated his shoulder. He was able to pop it back in within the next 30 seconds. And then guess what evolution we had right after that? Log PT for the next 2 hours. And he made it through. So, I would say that a torn labrum with separated shoulder issues is much worse than shoulder tendonitis. So, yes, you could make it through. Though, once again, you keep pushing tendonitis to a point where, you start really screwing your shoulder up. Could be, it could be a long rehab issue with surgery. So that's a tough one to answer, to be honest with you. I would perhaps go see another doctor. That's all I could do. I imagine everything that I would say would be to rest it, ice it, mobility work, massage it, electric stim. If none of that's working, I don't know. Baywatch movie. You like that? Yeah, we this was like 2 days before graduation. We're in our UDT life jacket or UDT shorts, and we're on a lifeguard tower. Yeah, 28 of us. That was pretty fun. 30 years ago. Good times. Let's see. People's argument with high mileage, 40 plus, is that it prepares the body for the beating of running a lot at buds. Respectfully curious why you prefer 20 plus fast. Now, that's not what I said. I said for SOAS, 20 plus fast is fine because he's only going to be there for a week. If you're there for 6 months, absolutely, you need to pick up your mileage. Now, I do recommend you being able to run 20 to 25 miles of that at a 6 to 7 minute mile pace. What I'm just saying is don't waste your mileage. And there's also, not a lot of evidence saying that the more mileage you have, the better prepared you are for beating. You're also beating yourself up to a point where you may be already almost having shin splints or almost having knee tendonitis or almost having a stress fracture before you even go there. And then buds put you into a stress fracture zone. So, I could argue the fact that you shouldn't run over 40 as well. It really depends on the individual. I've seen a lot of people waste their buds preparation time by running 50, 60 miles a week, and they wound up failing a 4-mile timed run. You know why? They got good at running 8, 9-minute miles, and they couldn't pass with a 7-minute mile pace. They couldn't pass with an 8-minute mile pace because in first phase, you get 32 minutes to pass a 4-mile timed run. But they couldn't pass it, because a lot of times, you take a 4 mile timed run on a Friday after your legs are toast from doing a mile worth of chest carry lunges with a log, and you're going to be a little slower. So that's why I always tell people to be in that 28-minute 4 mile pace so they can actually have some gravy time in there in case their legs are trash. They're not going to fail it, and they may get a 30 because they're a little slower than what they could do, but they're not going to fail it and get kicked out. So, a lot of people run 8-10 mile runs and they're just beating up their legs, not necessarily preparing themselves smartly for the beating. So I would say there's arguments on both sides of that. You just need to figure out what kind of athlete you are. Do you need more mileage? I was one that needed more mileage. I was one that hit 40, 45 miles a week because, once again, I needed to be the endurance athlete that I was not for the prior 10 years before that. VT, I'm not sure what you're asking. Okay. There's a good podcast where he and Jeff discuss that. Yeah, Jeff and I actually discuss running programs differences. He has a lot lower volume running program than I do. I have a higher volume program than he does. But together, ours probably doesn't reach 50 miles a week. 40, 45. Let's see, I have one that gets up to 35 miles a week, which is really good. And they're all useful miles. There's not a whole lot of 10-minute mile pace running in it. When you were in the SEAL community, were you worried about seriously getting hurt? Yeah, I was hurt a lot. Sucked. I had ankle surgery. I had a stress fracture in my femur. Had a lower back injury. Had a couple of concussions. Hurt my shoulder. Nothing bad, just separation, not dislocation. But yeah, I mean, it sucked. You got injured. Let's see. Thanks for the answers. Do you ever get out of state guys coming down to work out with you? Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, if you're on the East Coast, come join us. Saturday workouts are a little more easier to attend. They're 8 a.m. versus 6 a.m. Monday through Friday. But yeah, we had guys from, right now we got guys from Texas, Alabama, New Jersey, some local guys, of course. But we got, several, some from Washington State even. So people come hang out with us for a little while and get going a little better. Let's see. There was an old workout you said you did 3 to 4 mile runs and 1,000 to 2,000 meters swim. Do you guys still do that? Yeah, that is kind of in my ballpark now. In fact, today I ran 4 miles and I swam 1,500. So, and also did pull-ups, push-ups, dips, those kind of activities. Even at 53, that's not difficult. Thanks for the advice. Leaving now. Next time. Yep, we'll see you, Mikhail. Yeah, I've been at it for an hour now. I just wanted to see how you guys were doing with another Q&A for the week. If you have feedback towards what days you think I should do a Q&A, I may keep them Monday, Tuesday, just because that seems to work. I'm definitely will be back tomorrow with some CSS critiques and some Q&A as well. But we also have a podcast I got to squeeze in with Jeff tomorrow, so it might be a little later than 9:30, 10. But I'm thinking about maybe trying it over the weekend, trying to maybe do a Sunday where we focus on getting the week ahead of us in that right mindset to get a week ahead of us. Take some questions, but also maybe focus on, here's what I'm doing this week. What are you guys doing? Something like that on Sunday might be kind of fun, I think. So it's coming. There'll be more of it because it seems to be pretty popular. So I will chat with you guys later. If you guys have any questions about the combat swimmer stroke, check out my TikTok, Stu Smith 50. Nothing but combat swimmer stroke critiques over there. Also, if you guys have been sticking around this long, I appreciate it. You guys can go to StuSmithFitness.com, save 20% on anything by using a COMPETE20 code. Good for a few days. So, all right, guys. I'll chat with you later. Have a good one.